us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
First order of business tonight is the approval of the minutes of the December 5th, 2018 and December 10, 2018 regular meetings. Do I have a motion to approve one or both of those?
I'll second it then.
Okay, who?
I made the motion. Councilman Fraser
Council- and
seconded.
he seconded. Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Those minutes are approved. Next on the agenda, I have a proclamation for the School Choice Week that I'd like to read. A proclamation commemorating the City of Taneytown School Choice Week. Whereas all children in the City of Taneytown should have access to the highest quality education possible, and whereas the City of Taneytown recognizes the important role that an effective education plays in preparing all students in the City of Taneytown to be successful adults, and whereas quality education is critically important to the economic vitality of the city and of Taneytown, and whereas the City of Taneytown is home to a multitude of excellent education options from which parents can choose for their children, and whereas educational variety not only helps to diversify our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community, and whereas our area has many high-quality teaching professionals who are committed to educating our children, and whereas School Choice Week is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, and organizations to raise awareness of the need for effective educational options. Now, therefore, James L. McCarran does hereby recognize January 20 through 26, 2019 as City of Taneytown School Choice Week, and calls this observance to the attention of all citizens. Okay, next on the agenda, and I apologize because it was out of order, is public hearing for ordinance 07, 2018, the zoning map correction of 2019. Are there any comments from the public on that? That's just a correction to the zoning map. Okay, hearing no comments from the galley, we'll move on. Next is the council member statements regarding conflicts of interest on agenda items. Does anybody have any conflict of interest?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Next is resolutions, ordinances, and agreements up for approval. First is the adoption of Resolution 2019-01, water allocations for January 2019.
Madam Chair, as a point of order, I believe we skipped another
What did we
line item,
skip?
public comment pertaining to agenda and non-agenda items.
My eyes keep going to the wrong line here.
Non-agenda items, this one.
Well, I believe we're combining,
Okay, I'm sorry.
you don't have the latest.
Let's move up. Does he have the latest
I
agenda?
don't believe so. It might be in this pile here, Councilman. Here we are, sir. You can follow that one.
Okay, once again, I apologize. Public comments pertaining to agenda and non-agenda items. Because this meeting is a little bit different in format, we will entertain comments on both agenda and non-agenda items at this time. When you approach the podium, please give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Rhonda Bean at 168 Grand Drive, and on the agenda, you have your amendments for campaign finance and ethics ordinances. On the campaign finances, they're not clear as to when and how you do them. So when you make adjustments and you're going to fine people $500 for if they don't do them correctly, the way they're worded could be interpreted different ways. And when you ask, the ethics committee doesn't even have any kind of communication between emails, phone numbers, names. There's no way to reach them. You don't even know when they meet. And when you ask through the city, you don't get clear answers as to how things are read. For example, on the ethics and the finance reports, it says in 15 days. There's no dates. 15 days could be read as business days. It could be business days and weekends. On the previous election, 2 of those days fell on holidays. So are they before the holiday? It was Memorial Day Monday. Monday before the holiday would have been the previous Friday or the Tuesday after. It's not clear how those finance reports are read or lined out. It doesn't say exact dates. If the election is held on a specific date, you should go by that date, and then each date that something's due, or it could be exact the date. You don't have to put so many days, and then it's not clear as to what days they are. There's other things on the finance reports that they specifically state on there that whether you're self-funded or not, the first $500 are not reportable. They're, you report them, but you can spend up to $500. And then on this new Section 1818 affidavit, it's the same. It still says whether you spend less than $500, you report it, but you always had $500, whether it was in kind, donated, money of your own, any kind of money, it was $500. So this is the same. The other part of it is what's in kind. So say there's another election coming up. Say you already had items that you had previously in the other election, and you wanted to use them for this election. You didn't spend any money on it. Nobody donated it to you. Nobody gave it to you. You didn't make it, so it wasn't something you had to come up with a cost. That's not in reality, it should be in kind because it's an actual item, but it's not laid out in the form to how you're really supposed to report it. So when you use things that you've had or you didn't get donated or somebody didn't actually pay for, it's in kind. But it's not laid out on the finance forms as to exactly how those items are to be reported. So it's very confusing, and you're going to charge somebody $500 if they do something wrong. Thank you.
Hi, Robin Fraser, Bentley Street. I thought we were going to have a public hearing on the campaign finance, but I'll speak to it anyway. I want to agree that the in-kind part of the financial information is important and confusing. If you can't spend more than $500, what if an organization does a mailer or something for you, you don't even know about it? And that would be an in-kind. It would pop you up over the 500, but how could you be responsible for that because another organization did that? So it might be something to think about with that $500 limitation, because that could very well happen. On 1818, it also talks about investigating. Any and all documentation can be asked for the Ethics Commission to do their investigation. I think it should say financial documentation. There could be instance where they wanted to know whether you knew about the person that was doing the robocall. And so they asked for your emails or your phone records or something. So I think the intent was to look at your bank statements and the financial information. So I would suggest putting financial in there. I'm concerned about Section 8B, where it says any person who willfully violates the provision. Willfully, how is that defined? We've had trouble with that in the past on other issues, and so I think the word willful should be defined. And it talks about finding people guilty by whom? By the ethics board, the election board, the council, the court. Who finds them guilty? I'm concerned about the $500, the up to $500, which gives somebody, the ability to fine one person $50 and one person $500, depending on who they like and who they don't like. I think there should be a fixed amount and should be equal treatment for everyone. And I also think that the Ethics Commission maybe should be fined if they make a mistake, because in the last election, they made a mistake on Catherine Adelaide's form, which cost about a half a day of trying to figure out why her balance didn't work. But it's because they told her to take something off of one side of the balance sheet and not the other, and it was very confusing. So, sometimes they make mistakes too. There should be an appeal process if you disagree, and if you have a mistake, there should be an opportunity to fix it, and that should probably be put right into the law. It's about process, not about people. Some people do a good job and some people don't. So if you make the process good, then it doesn't matter who the people are. So those are the changes that I would suggest for that. And I wanted to bring up another issue. In the last 60 days, there have been 5 alleged violations to the Frasers, and I have a couple of folks that have the same
time is up.
violations, and I'm going to hand those in, I guess, in the form of a complaint, even though I don't like to complain against my neighbors, so we can see if we get equal treatment. Thank you.
Any other public comments pertaining to both agenda and non-agenda items? Okay, hearing none. Now we're at resolutions, ordinances, and agreements. First up for adoption is Resolution 2019-01, water allocation for January 2019. Is there a motion to?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is ordinance 07, 2018, the zoning map correction for 2019.
I move that we approve.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, ordinance 08, 2018, amendments to the campaign finance ordinance. Do I hear a motion?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, so moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Can I make a public comment on that? I mean, it's on the table now. Discussion, would that be all right? I think that there has to be a hearing on these 2 changes of the ordinance for their adoption, because Joe Figliotti wisely noticed in the last meeting that we couldn't adopt it because it hadn't been introduced yet. So when we voted to introduce it, now it would come forward for a public hearing, like we heard earlier today. But regarding that, the first page of this campaign finance ordinance seems to be pretty good in sections 1, 2, and 3, but the restrictions on contributions are known as 18.9. And I believe that the point made earlier is correct. If a person files a campaign affidavit for self-funding limited to $5, they cannot control what a third party would do to advocate for them. I'm an officer in a local Republican club, and we make campaign contributions all the time, but we don't ask candidates permission to give money. And so I think that's very problematic to not spell out, and I think that should be amended. And I'd like to add the words "in-kind contribution" to the law you're about to pass when it says said monetary contributions and in-kind contributions. there on page 2. And I'd move that we do that.
Well, let's discuss that before you move on. I think firstly, a third party would fall under, I believe there's a lobbyist portion of our campaign finance. Is that correct, Jay?
A political committee.
Committee, right. So that would fall under that. It wouldn't count against the candidate because it was not by their authority. However, whoever does it does need to report it, and they need to register as a political committee to the city.
So just for clarification, based on what you said, that probably meets my concern there. Like, for example, when Paul Chamberlain ran, he put in, signed the affidavit for $500. If someone had come along and done things to advocate for him, for he's a fine, able neighbor of mine, and would be great on the council, the people who advocate for him, that believe in him, that amounts of money they spend should be filed, as you say, separately.
That's
But he would not be responsible.
Yeah, it's not under his authority or his campaign.
good,
There's a different thing that addresses that.
In 18.9, that's certainly not
But keep
clear.
in mind, they would be subject to the same rules as this. If they fail to file as a political committee, or, robocalls, things like that, they're going to be subject to the same sort of discipline that a candidate can. It doesn't make them immune to these, and I don't want to see candidates go out and just get third parties to do all this and try to do it under the radar, because then they can still be quote-unquote self-funded by getting others to spend money on them. They still have a responsibility as well.
I think that a lot of people advocate, I support organizations that contribute money to candidates.
And that's fine. They just have a responsibility that they need to adhere to.
Okay, and then, Madam
Well,
Chairman.
one other quick point. You said if somebody made a contribution to them, not, if you're talking financially, right, and somebody hands you a check for your campaign, you would have to report that. And it's up to you whether or not you choose to accept the check.
So do you agree with that?
So it's not just somebody
that-
giving you cash, it's somebody giving you, something that has a paper trail to
So
it.
just to clarify what you said, Councilman Bigliotti, the $500 of your own money, additional contributions would be above or below the $500?
That's just your money. If you accept any money from anybody, then you are no longer self-funded.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's whether
Glad we
in
discussed that.
kind, well, that's abundantly clear in this. I'm not sure what you're misunderstanding. When we talk about third party, that's an organization who buys 20 signs to put up on your behalf, and it's under their authority, not yours. If it says authority Donald Frazier, that's on your campaign. If it's,
Frazier, I guess.
if you put them up and it said that, yes. If it's a third party, authority, Bob's Donald supporters, that's not your campaign, but they're going to be subject to the same rules that your campaign would be.
Right, okay, that's a good that we discussed that while adopting or failing to adopt this. On page 3, Madam Chairman, there's a concern in the last paragraph of 18.8. It says, further, the Ethics Commission shall be empowered to request and receive any and all documentation from those regulated under this chapter. I don't think they should have authority, for example, to require documents not related to financing, since this is called campaign finance. For example, in Section B, under Section 8, it says, if any person who willfully violates the provisions of this chapter shall be found guilty of a misdemeanor. I don't know how you're going to get anybody to run for office if they can find $500 per violation and be found guilty of a misdemeanor if they make a mistake. But anyway, I don't think the Ethics Commission should be empowered to receive any documentation they request, but just financial documents. So I would suggest amending, taking the word out, documentation, and say any and all financial documents from the regulations under this chapter, and add the words financial regulations. And I'd move we amend the ordinance before it's voted on to take out the word documentation and clarify it by adding the word financial documentation, because I don't think the Ethics Commission should be able to, for example, prove a case whether somebody willfully or not.
So you just made a motion for that, right?
Yeah, I made a motion to do that.
I'm going to second that for the point of discussion, because there are two things
Thank
I'd
you
like
for that, Joe.
there are two things I'd like to address with what you just said. The first thing, this idea about fining people because of mistakes, right? The language wasn't in there last time around, and nobody got fined dramatically for making an unintentional mistake. I made a couple of mistakes on my forms.
too.
Right, and the committee said, hey, you need to fix this stuff. I fixed it, I turned it back in, it was done. It's not this evil person with a hammer saying, you'd better you'd better go ahead and do this correctly, or I'm going to fine you for the tiniest mistake. I mean, again, as I've mentioned before, these are people we know, these are neighbors, these are residents of town who want to see things done right. They're not out there to bully people, they're not out to be, cruel. They just want to, they want to do the right thing. And what was the other point you made about?
I just want to add the word financial to limit their power
so my
not
second-
to request any and all documents.
Okay, so
it's way too broad for me.
Okay, so my question then, to your point, is could you provide an example of a document that they might request that would not be financial or pertaining to the campaign?
Sure, right, that's the one I brought up just a moment ago. In section B, it says a person who willfully violates the chapter. You could want to introduce information that we discussed it on emails or any documents to prove that we deliberately did that. And so those sorts of things,
Well, then
I think,
wouldn't
for
that be
adjudicating whether I should get a $500 fine or not for each and every violation. When Brad challenged my candidacy, there was, when I ran for office, there were 5 or 6 different things that could have happened. I'd had to fine $2,500 if this law was in place before I ever got on the ballot, and I'm really concerned about that.
So correspondence detailing financial transactions, whatever you would think would not be considered financial?
I think that those things that are under the campaign finance ordinance, because that's its name and purpose, should be listed not to all documents, but all financial documents. And we have a motion and a second on the table, thank you, Joe, to add the word financial in front of documents to limit their power not to just dig and go fishing for things.
Well, I feel like we do this every meeting, but let's go ahead and read the whole sentence. It says, further, the Ethics Commission shall be empowered to request and receive any and all documentation from those regulated under this chapter to support, substantiate, or investigate matters related to the purposes of this chapter. It is not any documents that are going to make your life miserable. It's what they will need to prove your innocence or guilt under this provision. Very simple. And if you want to be found innocent of whatever they're accusing you of, then by all means, provide whatever you can to prove it. If you have something to hide, then absolutely fight it tooth and nail. But that's the key here. If you actually have nothing to hide, then you shouldn't have an issue complying with the request. And if you don't like it, take it to court above the city.
Well, Madam Chairman, for the purpose of colloquy with my fellow councilmen, it is possible for future boards that are maybe not as good as our current board to request additional information that would substantiate, what's the words that you read? Support, substantiate, or investigate. It's the investigatory things that I'm concerned about, and I'd like to add the word financial. And so, do my peers agree with that?
It's clear. It says matters related to the purposes of this chapter. If you say just financial, there could be things that could prove your innocence or guilt that are not financially based. It could be a letter that you had with a third party of an agreement.
Well,
And they want to see that agreement in writing.
Well,
But it's not financial, so they can't ask for it.
what you're saying. The idea is, this is brand-new finding authority. They never had the finding authority before now. Now they can go up to $500 per occurrence against the potential candidate that's in business, and I want to limit their ability to get supportive investigative things by adding the word financial. And that's why I made the motion, and
Well, would you like to propose a lower maximum fine?
oh, yes.
Oh, well, you haven't said one yet, so I'm kind of anxious to hear it. Above $0 and under 500 is what I'm expecting to hear from you.
Well, I think we have a motion and second for an amendment. I propose to add the word financial on page 3 under section 18.8, and I don't want to, maybe we'll do that next, if that's okay, Madam Chairman.
Call the question.
You'd like to vote on the amendment, is that correct?
Yeah.
Councilwoman Fuller has called the question.
It's just, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
So
I'll call the question for
adding the word
the
financial.
addition of
The word financial.
the word financial, as suggested by Councilman Frazier. All in favor of adding the word financial?
This one right here.
Oppose?
Aye.
Opposed.
Okay. Now back to is the original motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask Councilman Frazier to suggest an alternative fine that he sees as this one being unfair.
Oh, well, I'm really opposed to giving the Ethics Commission, a non-elected board, any fining authority that approaches that. Make it $5,000 per agreement.
Well, that sounds like a plan.
I think it's really the worst piece of legislation I've ever seen since I've been on the council.
Well,
to give an unelected board this kind of abusive authority.
You've said that a lot of times, so it kind of loses meaning with us.
No, but these people are not elected. We don't, their names are not on the website. We really don't know who the ethics members are without doing some investigation.
Well, because then you'd get harassed and bullied if everyone knew who they were.
Well,
I mean, it happened.
Or if they give that kind of authority.
It happened 4 years ago when one of them was harassed at the grocery store. I mean, what I'm saying, if you think it's unfair, I would like to ask you to provide something you think is more fair, but would deter people from constantly violating this and making a mockery of the system.
From running for office. I think this will deter people from running for office if they could be convicted of a misdemeanor, if they make a mistake on their form, or be fined per occurrence up to $500. I think.
So you vote against accountability and transparency. Is that what I'm getting here?
No. You're asking for new authority in this ordinance to allow this non-elected board to issue $500 penalties for a potential candidate per violation, and I think that you've come out of the chute with a $500 figure, which is shocking.
Okay,
and I want the world to know that.
And that's why we're discussing. I'm giving you a chance to offer an alternative to that. And you haven't provided that yet. You can't simply say it's bad, and not provide an alternative for us to discuss and consider.
Well, I've said in the paper I'm going to vote against it because I don't think they should have any finding authority of this type. I'll make the motion if Brad wants to. Why don't you make the motion? I'll second it. How about $50 instead of $500? Make it a little bit more palatable.
Well, I won't make that motion, no. I'm just asking for your input.
Well, I think that it's incredible.
Councilman, I have a question for you.
I mean, if I had more than a couple, and you said you did too, mistakes.
Yeah,
You don't
and
believe it's
Very
possible?
understanding about it.
And, yeah,
And
the point
he
is
was
not...
given a chance to correct them, and
I
he
was
did.
saying, but I'm not
Councilman,
sure
hold
I
on.
will.
Councilman, the
Now.
point is not intimidation. The point is, as Councilman Wang so wisely said, to ensure deterrence, right? So, absent a fine, right, absent the ability for the committee to how would you enforce compliance? How would you ensure that people who are willfully doing something wrong are held to account?
I think that the public sector is a way to do that. Things that go on in government are open and free. People know if people violated things. So you could do letters. All the letters that have been written from the county have been given to the Carroll County Times regarding my family.
Yep.
They're given to the Carroll County Times before I even get a copy of it.
That's not enforcing compliance. How are you? That's what I'm getting at. How do you ensure compliance if there's no fine, if there's no
There's no
punitive
discipline.
measure?
You just have people continually making a mockery of it because there's nothing you can do to them otherwise. And there are people who would do that.
And to
Madam
say
Chairman,
you leave it in the public domain means what? If I vote for someone and it turns out he has willfully done something wrong, I have to wait 4 years to vote him out?
No, I think that this is all happening during the campaign. Everything that's in this ordinance happens during the campaign. But there's a schedule for filing forms, and it's all happening during a campaign.
I'm
At some point,
glad
the
you brought that
campaign
up, the
ends.
schedule. To clear one other point up too,
Disagree with you.
when all the dates are chosen, there's a calendar of dates that are put out. So there are specific dates. It's not just, 15 days from whenever. There is a specific schedule that we adhere to, and all that is public information. It's given directly to candidates.
And that's my point. The public information aspect of running for office will bring discipline without $500 fining authority.
But it hasn't.
Right. It's the way that a person that charges is the Ethics Commission. The person that fines is the Ethics Commission. There's no appeal process, and there's no due process is required in the Constitution to face your accuser. So this is really problematic to put in a $500 fine by a non-elected board. I think you should think twice, and I also think it has to be a public hearing, and at the county commissioner's office, they always allow 10 days for the record to be keep open for other people to have public comment. For most of the people in the listening audience, this is the first time an in-depth discussion of this ordinance has occurred because you wisely changed the vote on it last month to an introduction vote.
I didn't change anything, it was just standard
No,
procedure that it was
following
going to be.
procedure.
You made a correction in the agenda is what I meant to say.
Oh, okay.
And I thought that was laudable, that you did notice that and did the proper thing there, and I voted with you on that.
Well, okay, so, but Councilman, I come back to my original point, is how do you enforce compliance? That's the crux of the matter here.
I do not believe we have a problem with compliance. I don't
Okay,
believe this didn't come from, this bill didn't come from any member of this council requesting it come up and be drafted. I believe it came out of the government of Taneytown without the council's input.
Well, you're right, the
Councilman-
Ethics Commission requested this.
Yeah, I think,
So, so Councilman, theoretically then, okay, let's just say for the sake of argument, no mistakes up until this point, no willful disobedience has occurred up to this point. What happens when you have a situation that arises in which action has to be taken? How do you enforce compliance
well,
then?
if it ain't broke, you don't need to fix it, Joe.
If the mechanism to enforce a punitive measure is not in place.
They brought in you and I and other candidates and said, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem. And then we were able to redress the grievance before a fine was issued. And everyone that I know of has complied in the end game
Well, but so you-
from up to this date, and there
You
is no problem to fix.
But then you disprove your own point. Because if you just admitted by your own admission there that people can
People make
correct their
mistakes.
mistakes. Right, and they can correct them. And there's nothing in here that says every mistake is going to be fine. There's
You
nothing in
trust
here.
people not to abuse finding authority a lot more than I do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. If you're going to trust people who run for office to not try to beat the system, then I can trust the Ethics Commission, they're going to do the right thing.
Well, not
That's why
always
they're in
have
that
this good
position.
ethics commission. You could have a bad ethics commission. Your mayor appoints the ethics commission.
And if there's a problem, we as mayor and council can remove them,
Say
if
the-
I'm correct.
So I think
The
it's-
mayor nominates an Ethics Commission, and the council approves the Ethics Commission.
Yeah, most of the time, those nominations do come before us and are mentioned.
They all do, they must. That's part of our code.
I agree with you on that.
Madam Chair, I
Okay,
call the
I'd like to
question.
call the question here. All in favor of the amendments to the campaign finance ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And I'm opposed to it. Too much finding authority to an unelected board.
Okay, next is ordinance 09-2018, amendments to the ethics ordinance.
I move that we approve as presented.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, I have a couple questions before you move forward with this. What definition is intended by putting the words that a person has to be a member of immediate family? There are people in this town that I know that are not married and not related to one another that went and got a tenants in common purchase of their house. They're not part of a blood family. I think it's rather insane to pass an ordinance that requires to include principal residents and entities not of the immediate family be listed in the disclosure. This bill is only 2 pages long, and I want to say, if I do have the floor, Madam Chairman, that never should we vote on an ordinance where the signature page is separate from the body of the letter. How do you know, if we were to sign this for adoption, that this page would go with this page if it's on 2 separate pages? And so,
Trust in the
unless it's one
professionals
of
who
one
deal with-
and
Yeah.
2 of one.
Well, we go back to ethics.
Trust
It's,
and ethics.
people have ethics for it. Now, let's again read in context what you just talked about. We'll start by reading. The nature of the property, including if it is the principal residence, and whether it or any part or portion thereof is rented or leased to individuals or entities which are not immediate family, and the location by street address, mailing address, or legal description of the property. If you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend, whatever that's living with you, fine. If you're renting them a part of your house,
They could
that's
be-
that's a whole different issue. You know, when you start opening up your house to, I'm going to rent this room and that room and the attic and the front cellar and under the heater and everything, that's where you have the problem. When you have immediate family, that's, you know, they live there, you know, even my 18-year-old son, if I want to charge him $200 rent so he learns how to, you know, grow up, he's immediate family.
Why is that wrong?
I didn't say it's wrong. I'm saying it's allowed under this. He's learning a valuable lesson. I'm not violating the code. And what's interesting is,
This is not, this has to do with disclosures for current
Correct.
elected
You're
officials.
disclosing that income, and it's saying if you're charging rent for people to live in your house, that is income, and you need to disclose that.
Why?
What do you mean, why?
Well, I don't think that Taneytown can regulate what people do with properties outside of Taneytown.
Outside of Taneytown, where does it say?
Well, it says
Okay,
the
location
candidate
by
will-
street address, mail, yeah, so you own a house in
Glen
Timbuktu.
Burnie. Yeah, I do.
And you rent it to people, that's income, and that's where we get into this ethics. We need to know where your money's coming from.
No, you don't.
Oh, absolutely, we do. And if we don't, the public needs to know where your money's coming from. Because how clean is that money coming in?
And what is meant by each business entity of which the individual or member individual's immediate family has a sole or partial ownership?
If you own all or part of a business, you or a member of your individuals of your immediate family, disclose that. Businesses especially, because that's where lobbying, that's where payoffs come in, that's where contract favors come in. When you have a deciding part of a business and you're an elected official, people like to grab that and cry foul. So this, you're disclosing that it exists. That way, the Ethics Commission can say, you have an issue here, you cannot vote on this.
Well, can I just ask a question of our attorney just before we go on?
Certainly.
Is this portion of Section 2.8, because it's not italicized, is this brand-new language?
No, the only...
I think that only a little bit of it is brand-new language.
Yeah, the only thing that's new there is it says it shall include a schedule of sources of income. Before, it had the word earned income. And it took the word earned out.
And put in the word sources.
And didn't put
I thought
any other words
that
in.
it was just a few words
So the
different
idea
from what
was-
we already have.
Right. Everything else that you have there is an existing statute.
Right.
In Section 8.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. Thank you for that.
Madam
encourage you not to
Chair, may I
adapt.
call the
Any
question?
further discussion?
I'd just encourage my
Councilman Wentz has called the question.
I call the question, Madam.
to vote for such a bill.
All in favor of ordinance 09, 2018, amendments to the ethic ordinance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed to it. Too much reporting to the Ethics Commission.
Next on the agenda is the city manager's report.
I'll be brief on what's on the chart there. We did distribute a draft of the capital improvement or capital projects to you guys last month, so we will probably be talking about that in future meetings, possibly at our February retreat. The Sewell annexation, I did meet with the Sewells in December. They're still working on some concept ideas and trying to come up with lot yields to see if all the numbers work. I expect to be meeting with them again later this month. They are working with the civil engineer to come up with some ideas. With regard to the Syrian property, that is the one that's we're trying to acquire a piece along the route of Antrim Boulevard. We've contacted CLSI for survey work that's going to be necessary to define that southern boundary line to preserve the road alignment. A couple of things that aren't listed on the report there. You may recall some time ago, the finance department was split into finance and water billing. We have moved that back to finance effective January 1. The water billing department, as it was called, wasn't actually recognized by the code, although there was some general administrative category that it might have fallen under. But I think that we're going to see that there's going to be some more opportunity for cross-training and better financial controls by it being under the finance umbrella. And Barry's actually already implemented a couple small procedural improvements that I think are going to help reduce errors and make sure that things run a little smoother. Our telephone upgrade, there's a memo in the packet, that's ongoing. The new desktop phones are installed. We're still keeping the old phones on our desks for a week or so, just to kind of keep them in parallel, just to be on the safe side. So far, everything is going smoothly, just a matter of getting the users in the habit of the changes with the new system. So that's going very well so far. With the election coming up in the spring, just so you know, we are using Electech Election Services again this year. They were good to work with before. The Elections Board was pleased with them, and Clara was very happy with working with them last time around. So we are going to be moving forward with them. And just so you're aware, I know this has been shared before, but the county will no longer allow their machines to be used or help us with our municipal elections. So we have to go private on it. Ethics forms were updated in anticipation that the ordinance would pass this evening. So Clara will be distributing those to you before you leave this evening. And we're asking for those to be back by February 14th. And the mayor wanted to make sure that this is part of Bob Mitchell's report for Parks and Rec. He just wanted to make sure everybody was up to speed and knew where we stood with regard to Bollinger Park and the Memorial Park gazebo project. So with regard to the gazebo, the contract's been signed. Great. We still need to, pick out specific finished materials and identify the specific location for the electrical outlets and some detailed things like that. But we are moving forward with it. And as far as Bollinger Park goes, concept site development plan will be presented to the Planning Commission for their meeting on Monday, the 28th, January 28th. So those two projects are moving along. The mayor wanted to make sure everybody was in the loop on those. And that's all I have.
Madam Chairman, a question for the manager, if I might. I noticed that today you emailed out the schedule for the budget.
Yes.
And is there a special meeting on February 20th for the introduction of the budget? And
Yes.
that's unusual time for a council meeting, and I wanted to find out what that's about.
Just to give an opportunity to have dedicated discussion for the budget.
It's not an introductory meeting, it's a discussion meeting. The budget is
Yes.
introduced, as I recall.
Right, that's just a budget workshop. That's
I
just
printed it and
to
looked
hash
out
over
all the
everything.
dates and trying to figure out what that date means there.
Right. So, and
Is that a public meeting that everyone can come and discuss the budget?
certainly it'll be open to the public, as all of our meetings are. So
Generally,
yes.
our budget workshops are not open for public discussion, but they're open for public observation. That way, we have a chance to tackle it before anyone else.
I just wasn't clear on that, and that helps a little bit, and thank you for that.
Okay, next on the agenda is the legal report.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I have good news to report. The Robin Fraser versus the City of Taneytown lawsuit has finally been concluded. The Court of Special Appeals affirmed the judgment in favor of the City of Taneytown. The court concluded that the trial judge did not abuse his discretion in determining that the city did not deliberately violate the Open Meetings Act. The court also found that there was no error in having the city manager present during the closed meeting, and that Ms. Fraser waived her rights to litigation reimbursement by having failed to raise the issue at trial. The court also noted that she would in any event not be entitled to attorney's fees because she was not represented by counsel and she was not the prevailing party. So that's the Court of Special Appeals opinion. No petition for cert to the Court of Appeals was taken, and so the matter is concluded. So
Thank you.
that's positive to know. The second item that I have to report on are the upcoming Board of Zoning Appeals hearings. There are going to be 2 hearings on January 22nd, so next week. The first one involves the Taneytown Crossing Project, and the second one involves the Meads Crossing Project. The first one is for a special exception to allow the garden apartments and the parking variations with the Taneytown Crossing. The second one is for a variance to the rear yard lots because the townhouses are too close to the rear yards to have the adequate rear yard amount if they have decks. So they're doing that all at once. So that's going on at that point in time. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for council?
No, ma'am.
Next on the agenda is old business.
I think, with respect to what Jay said, I think it has to be said on record here that there was a comment made on Facebook, I think last week, saying that council had taken a position on the new development. And I need to go on record here and say that no one on council, one way or the other, has made any kind of statement of support or, disapproval of that development. And I think that needs to be cleared up and stated for the record.
Well, may I speak to that, Madam Chairman? I voted against the high-density development on Harney Road that the mayor.
I don't believe we ever voted on
The
that.
mayor, you all voted for that, but I voted against
No.
that. The mayor had put a piece on that terrorist website, the Taneytown Record, and had...
Wait. Did you just call the Taneytown Record a terrorist
Not the
website?
Record, the Taneytown Watchdog, I misspoke.
It was Taneytown Neighborhood, I believe that was
There was a letter in
on.
my box from Clark Schaefer's law firm.
So you're calling a
Get
citizens
that?
activist Facebook page is a terrorist group? Just so I'm clear with that.
That there was a letter in my box when I got my mail from Clara, from an attorney that complained about the high-density development that was proposed for Harney Drive. And I just want to go on record that somebody from the council has been opposed. I voted against also the DARA agreement for the Mead Crossing because it didn't give any money to Rex and
That's not what I'm
Parks.
talking about.
Well, let's be clear. This council has never voted regarding Taneytown Crossing. Is that correct?
That's correct. The Taneytown Crossing has not even been put into the subdivision process, the site plan process at all. The only blush that the council and mayor had was dealing with a position on whether to support their application to the Department of Housing and Community Development for funding.
Right.
And you didn't vote on it. The mayor just said he was opposing it, and you all let that happen. He said, I'm opposing it. And he was opposing the funding portion from DHCD.
Right.
The confusion, there's no DARA, there's no high-density development or any of that. This is not that project. So this is...
Right. I think Councilman Vigliotti is correct by saying that the council should go on record saying that we've never gone on record about this project, and anything that paints us in a different picture is unfortunately inaccurate.
And to finalize the letter that you got, just to be clear, because that was misstated, Attorney Clark Schaefer is the attorney for the applicant for the Taneytown Crossing project. So he represents the developer that's doing that. And he was taking exception to the mayor and the city posting on the website or whatever it was that you all were opposed. Okay, that's what he was taking exception to, not that he was opposing the development. That's his client. Okay, so.
Okay. So is this something, Councilman Vigliotti, were you thinking something in the form of a letter to the developer saying that we have not taken an official stance? Would that be of any benefit to kind of soften this blow on them, or?
I think it might be appropriate because, we're not at a stage where we would be commenting at all. It's still got to go through its own channels through our own organization.
Well, I don't believe we will ever see it here at the council. Is that correct?
Never. It's
Never.
not
Okay, well,
before you.
then-
But I think that what you're talking about is, you received a letter
Right.
saying that they took exception to that.
Right.
If you're going to respond, the response could be something that the city manager writes saying, at tonight's meeting, the council expressed that they had not, that is, they hadn't taken a position.
Correct.
Correct.
Well, Madam Chairman, just for clarification's sake, this is the piece of, this is a piece of development, new development that I voted against.
But we never had a vote. That's why
We
you don't
never had a
understand.
vote.
We voted to go forward with that annexation or not go forward with it.
No, you're on the wrong topic, Councilman. This is about Taneytown Crossing, which is at the intersection of West Baltimore Street and Harney Road. This is not the Sewell's Farm annexation, high density, whatever it is. Completely different topic. We really need to stay on this
So what is
topic and discuss
What is the
this.
mayor talking about in this controversial?
Exactly what we're talking,
website?
exactly what we just said. It is the Taneytown Crossing, which was, the developer received some sort of state tax credits in order to help fund the project to provide affordable housing for, the word just literally.
Low in
Correct.
Control.
Rent, yes. It is not the Sewell's Farm thing. It is simply a lower income housing alternative that would be managed. It's appropriate for the zoning that it's going into. I don't want to say too much because we have not gone on the record as being on the record, so
I just want to say, before we leave this topic, Madam Chairman, that the tone of the mayor's posting is that there's inappropriate, that the work of the planning commission, and you serve, Brad, on the planning commission, and apparently they've gotten a green light at the planning commission, but the council's never spoken on it. And I think it might be appropriate even tonight to speak about this high-density development.
That's not that development. That's not the
Okay.
case.
You just said it's that the
it's not
development
the
that he's talking about.
it's not the high-density development. Let's talk about what the planning commission did. It was going to be in my report, but I'll go ahead and say it now. The planning commission has the ability to review BZA cases and provide recommendations to the BZA based on their expertise, because they deal with zoning on a regular basis. BZA does not. So the planning commission can look at something and suggest things to look at, suggest ways that they might want to address different things, and then they'll say whether they give a recommendation or a non-recommendation on it. For Taneytown Crossing, they provide a favorable recommendation to it for several reasons. First off, the zoning allows it. The only special exception is for the garden apartments and the parking, which we talked about. The other part is there's really no legal way that the city can say no to it without being discriminatory. That's another issue that needs to be looked at. This borders on discriminatory. When you say we don't want low-income housing, we don't want rental housing, you're going into a whole different issue, and that's what's kind of putting the city into some liability here, and that's why the council needs to address the fact that we have not said that.
Correct.
But that's what the planning commission has done. They gave favorable recommendation because there's nothing in the plan that is contrary to the city's master plan. Thank you. Madam Chair?
Okay. Next on the agenda is,
Madam Chairman, just a quick question and clarification. Chris Tillman, 10 York Street.
Mr. Tillman, we're not accepting public comment right
I
now.
was going to say,
Sorry,
It's,
but you can come after the meeting.
Okay, I would have thought that since there isn't a public comment period on this, that we get a clarification of the statement. Because if it's something that has to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, you have said that it meets the zoning, but it doesn't because the garden apartments don't meet the zoning and the parking requested didn't meet the zoning.
right, the opportunity for public comment on this will be at the zoning appeals.
And that's fine.
Right.
yes, on
I
the
just wanted to clarify
22nd.
what you had said,
Yeah,
Councilman West.
and we can discuss that afterwards if you'd like. I'd be happy to.
Is the consensus to draft a response to Clark Schaefer?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes.
No, I don't
Thank
think
you.
we should do that. I think Clark Schaefer's right.
Clark Schaefer's
I'm voting-
asking us,
I'm voting against going on record saying we don't have an opinion about this. The planning commission has made an error and given special exception for high-density garden apartments, and I think I'm against it. I want an opportunity to vote no on that. And so I'm voting no now.
I have a question for the, Madam Chair, may I ask the city attorney a question? Thank you. May I read an excerpt of this letter?
Yeah, the letter that you received from Clark Schaefer?
Yes.
There's no privilege.
That's not
attached to
confidential.
that.
Okay, thank you. I'm concerned that we're talking about different letters, Councilman, because you said you agree with Clark Schaefer. Is that correct?
Yeah, he protested the posting of this criticism of his development on the Taneytown Watchdog.
Right, because he represents the developer. The comment that I want to pull out of here is, we respect the right of the mayor to both participate in public affairs and to exercise his general First Amendment rights. However, we are concerned that the published communication, parentheses, we are, of course, unaware of any oral or other communications the mayor may be engaged in are misleading or not accurate. And it goes on to talk in more detail about the project and to simply state that they kind of felt under attack by what the mayor was saying in opposition to it. So I'm trying to understand, if you agree with what they're saying, then you agree with what we're trying to do here tonight.
Why did the planning commission give a special exception to these
Good
high-density?
dodge. Good dodge. I like that.
High-density
They didn't.
houses.
They
He
didn't.
just said in his report that they gave a special
That hearing's
exception
next
to the garden
Tuesday.
apartments.
And my report, I gave next Tuesday on the 22nd, the Board of Zoning Appeals
Well, I
will
think
have
it's going to be a
hearing on
crowd
that
if
matter.
people have learned out next Tuesday
And then that's, as I told Mr. Tillman, you can comment and they'll make a decision.
Correct.
The issue at hand, and I mean, I want to summarize this because it's painful, it seems like, is the mayor posted on Facebook that the mayor and council were opposed to this. And
Which is
the mayor
incorrect.
and council has never voted on this. It's never been before you to vote. It's never been anything to vote.
Correct.
And I was under the impression that Councilman Vigliotti wanted to go on record to say what I just said, that the mayor and council as an entity has never expressed a position.
Right.
It's just never been before you to do.
Right.
Right.
That's all.
It's a very simple thing.
That's what I was thinking that he was asking.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, exactly so.
If that summarizes it, hopefully we can
No, it does, it does.
clarify.
Okay, moving on. Under new business, monthly financial report. Can I hear a motion to accept the monthly financial report?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is accounts payable. Hear a motion to approve the accounts payable.
Motion. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next is council member report.
Madam Chair, before we move on, may I bring up a portion of new business?
Sure.
Thank you. This, I guess, is directed to city staff. I'm a little confused on something I received in my email the other day, a letter regarding an email issue, and I'm kind of confused of what happened, what's happening. Can you fill the council in on what this email issue is?
Well, you're referring to the letter from the mayor?
Yes.
Is that something that you'd want to talk about in closed session rather than talk about here? You all have the letter.
Well, I feel like every time we go in closed session, we just cause more drama, so.
I agree.
Is it?
Okay.
It's something that, yeah.
Well, the letter from the mayor was sent to, well, back up, the email issue that's at hand is that the city received a public information request from the Carroll County Times to get all of Councilman Frazier's emails from the time he was in office until the present date.
Just Councilman Frazier or the?
Just Councilman Frazier. And so the city received the request and basically went through of how we can do that, how that information can be obtained, and then had to go through and vet the request because we can't release certain information that would be contrary to the Public Information Act, most notably attorney-client privilege information, things that were sent. As you know, I send you emails, mark it attorney-client privilege, and that type of thing.
Right.
So those issues were put together on a matrix, and the information was put together electronically and distributed to the public, to the Carroll County Times under the provisions of the Public Information Act. Not all the information obviously went. Certain things were denied, and they were noted to them. The mayor was informed, the city manager was informed when this request came through, because in collating those things, those information, there became some anomalies in the email use that seemed that it needed to be reported to the mayor because they would have violated the town's IT policy. And that's what that letter basically stated to you, is that there were some violations of the IT policy by Councilman Frazier. Most notably in the letter, and I'm sure you all have a copy of it, was the sharing of emails that were marked attorney-client privilege, again, and the use of his email for a personal dating site. So those things were noted, and the mayor instructed him to cease immediately.
Well, I'd like to speak to that since my name was mentioned. We made a request to the city today to get exactly what was released to the Carroll County Times, and it was provided to us, several pages of what has happened since October, and also a thumb drive I haven't had a chance to review with special instructions from Daniel Dennis. And I've never seen these emails. When I log on to my email, I delete everything in clutter. And everybody that wants to know that I keep a very clean email, and I delete everything that's clutter. I've never seen these emails that are being referred to. Not until today, when I picked up the paperwork, and I didn't respond to any of them. They're all received junk mail. They're spam mail. And I don't know why it's on my email, but I delete everything on my email every time I log in and keep a very clean email. And I have not abused any of these. There's only one potential attorney-client privilege was announced when of a meeting from the mayor we could find that my wife received. So I think that's not an issue.
But you say your wife received. Did you send it to her?
I usually take anything that's relevant and I send it to my email and deal my email. I really don't like Office 365. I can't do the things I want, attaching things. So I send everything to my email, and when the printer's not working, I send it to my wife's email.
Okay, well,
And
definitely in
I
the
do
future,
that
that
so I
needs to
can
be.
print. I print things. In
All right.
our house, we don't have a printer on every computer.
Well, that needs to, ma'am, that definitely needs to be avoided in the future. But you were saying that you said it was adult dating sites, is that what you said?
You sure you want to talk about this in public session still?
Well, I feel like we're already talking
It's
about it, so I'm kind
defamatory
of.
to me that you would bring this up and talk about it at this meeting.
I asked when we started if you.
Well, my problem is in closed session, we always get threats of lawsuits, complaints to open meetings. Somehow we don't do it right, even though we do. So we've said several times that we're just going to eliminate closed sessions, except when absolutely necessary. So you're saying that these were all spam emails that you received?
I've never seen them. I delete all clutter every time I get on. The first thing I do is delete clutter, and then I go down the emails. The things that are relevant I delete, and I send them to my personal email for storage. And I was able to find the email from Daniel Dennis that says that they did not have any of my email history when I requested it earlier this year. I requested my email history earlier this year to prove that I never said in an email that I was going to the summer convention of MML. I never did that. And so I was very interested in my email history, but I wasn't given any email, just a few emails then, but now there's pages and pages of emails that have come, and I don't know what happened. I tried to think of reasons that might be all day.
Well, the only thing I can assume is that there's only a certain amount of days of archives available. Is that? I've worked in servers in the past, and I assume that's how it's addressed.
The request to put the color on the painting here was from Councilman Frazier to the IT department and through the city manager was, can you get your deleted emails back? That's what you requested.
Because I have this bad habit, maybe it's a bad habit looking backward, just to clear the whole email out every month when I...
Whatever it was, can we get the deleted emails back? That
I
was
get
the
a lot of
request.
junk mail, a
And
lot.
so 45 days, so you know how this works. You hit delete, it goes to your trash can. You hit your trash can delete, and you think it's all gone, but it's not all gone. It goes onto the server.
Say it's always recoverable.
And so 45 days worth of the server information was brought back into your file at your request sometime in the fall, whenever you made that
There was
request.
none of this that's in this current disclosure.
I-
In that
I
request
don't-
of Daniel Dennis just a couple months ago.
Look-
I've either been set up or
Before we go any
scammed.
further, Councilman, would you like to go into closed session to have
No,
this
no,
discussion?
I can't put back in the bottle what you've taken out of the bottle. I need a
I'm just
time
saying
to face my accusers, and now's a great time to do it.
Okay.
Well,
I've never seen these emails, just
think
like I've
the
never
opportunity-
seen the violation letter you sent. It was in the Times paper before I saw it, the one of about a month ago. I feel it's a pattern of harassing our family. Did you all get copies of the fine, the violation on the trailer in front of my house this past month?
No, I saw that in the paper.
Yeah, it's in the paper, but it's outrageous. You thought you had me on the trailer, but I happened to have borrowed the trailer. What are you talking about? I'm getting a violation every week from the town of Taneytown. And you've certainly got our attention as a family, and this is just another smoking gun.
All right, well, I think Councilman Fuller is correct in asking if you want to go in closed session, because I'm wondering are these emails available?
Yes.
You said they've been given to the Times. Are these available for us to?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that...
They were given to Councilman Frazier today.
Dennis to scrub these out so I don't get them in my clutter.
Look,
I don't want this email in my
I'm
file.
not really of who did or who struck John. All I'm telling you is...
Well, you've struck me tonight.
Well, when we had to provide this information to the Times,
We didn't have to provide it. You could have said no to that.
You would want me to not...
The way I understand the request, we just wanted MML, a big giant
that's what
victory,
you wanted.
not to provide all this data
That's not-
to the press.
That's not anything.
But you immediately provided all my email history to the Times. You
First
should
of
have
all,
fought them on
it
that.
wasn't me. Second of all,
You were not
the
consulted about it.
Times made a public information request.
You did not have to
And the
comply with
public
those.
information request.
Don't have to comply.
And
Really?
it just,
Hold on.
It's important to note, I mean, and I want to come back to when you all were elected, I told you this could happen. Okay, I'd be telling you this in closed session. I told you, your emails are public information.
I agree with that.
And therefore, if there is a request made, they must be disclosed unless there is a reason or an exemption.
Well,
And the exemption
Madam Chair.
was attorney-client privilege. That was the ones that we flagged from yours. The other ones are part of your public email. I don't know or why they're there or how they got there or what you do, but when that happened, Dan Dennis had an obligation to report that to his supervisor, the city manager, and the city manager had an obligation to report it to the mayor. And the mayor wrote you this letter, which wasn't a month ago, it was last week, when you were informed that this happened.
We were out of town. We went 10 days to Texas this Christmas.
Well, the mayor wrote the letter last week. You guys got a copy of it last week. The Times got a copy of the emails last week. If you all want copies of them, they're a little voluminous to print. It could be done, but the way we provided them to Councilman Frazier today is on a zip
Thought you
drive.
would. I want to thank Claire for the hard work that she did along with Daniel Dennis to get me what's been said about me.
All right, so the zip drive is available, and it can be manufactured for you all. It
It's
can be
libelous.
pulled
If
out.
I wasn't a city elected official, I certainly would file a libel suit. But I don't have that ability as an elected
Is there
official to
anything on
defend
them that's
myself
going to
in the
negatively
same way others
impact the
do.
rest of us? I'm just curious. Has he done anything that's going to?
You said you violated attorney-client privilege by forwarding an email that.
Robin, I don't believe I did that. I believe that it was
didn't. You just said-
the meeting that apparently was being discussed, is only one, and that there was a plural word said, Ms. Fuller, was announcing a meeting. It was not a privileged
Did it
communication.
say attorney-client privilege on
I
it?
have not seen it, but from the people who helped me look at those today, this is not a privileged piece of information, just an announcement of a meeting. That's the only potential violation. You'd have to really dig deep to say I violated the attorney-client privilege in the last couple months.
We should have been doing this differently, but
Yeah.
what you just said violates attorney-client privilege.
No, it
When you
doesn't.
said you had other people helping you look at your emails,
What I got today was pages and pages of stuff, and I could not possibly go to work today and finish reviewing all that. But I have completed the review by this evening's meeting, and this is all junk mail, and I never responded to any of it. Okay?
I'm just telling you
It's
what
all
the letter was
spam.
about, if we go back to the beginning.
Yes.
And the emails to your question, Councilwoman, is the city in jeopardy with any of this? From a legal standpoint, the ones that are most concerning to the mayor were the sharing of the attorney-client privilege. Regardless of the content, it was still shared. That's neither here nor there at this point. And the use of the city email for inappropriate purposes, which was the dating site, regardless of whether it was intentional, unintentional spam.
I don't know
The emails
anything
come in
about
and
that.
say, the
I
emails
didn't
say that.
respond to any of it. It's all incoming junk.
I'm just telling you what it
I
says.
can't
I don't
control,
care.
I get 50 to 90 junk emails on my other email
They s-
every day.
I'm not arguing the point. You've asked me what they say because you don't have them.
Right.
I'm trying to tell you. I would rather have told you in closed session. We can show you the physical emails later. But to your question, that's what it is. Why? I'm not into the whys. I'm just telling you what it was. And it was clear that they were sent to the email address because the emails say you are receiving this because you are registered to the dating site. So.
And I would like a copy. It's in the paper. He has it. I think the council
Is it in the
should
paper
be seeing
already?
this.
Everything
It
else
was
gets-
provided to the paper, they said.
That was
That's
the
what
reason
triggered
for this whole thing, was that they requested your email.
We've been doing that over and over, giving things to the paper before you give them to me. You got to stop doing that. That's wrong.
That's actually the correct way to do it.
You were notified of this as a courtesy because we would want that notification to anyone else. But you're asking, what you're saying is it's okay when you file a Public Information Act, we should act on it, we should deal with it.
Oh, they
But
did it.
then we're supposed to make a determination, we make the same one across the board every
The
time.
normal way for the county to get grants or PIAs about email content is to require the press to specifically request emails on topics. But they've been prohibited in the courts, if I'm not mistaken, to do fishing expedition for 100% of the content.
They can request
So I think
whatever
you
they
might have
like.
erred on giving legal advice if you advised them to release all my emails since October.
I should go through and protect which ones that I think shouldn't be
Well,
released. Is
the
that what you're saying?
PIAs that request information, like how I discussed the gazebo project, you could ask for that, but I don't believe it's a violation of my civil right to
Well, I think
release
that
all my
as a
emails to
public
the press.
official, you need to be more familiar with the Public Information Act then.
No, I think you may have erred.
No, as a
Mr.
public
Gallo.
official, none of your emails are private.
That's why you should be
Anything can be
using...
requested at any
But
time
the
by
decision of the
anyone.
town was to rush to release them without my
No,
knowledge.
the city of, the duty of the town was to comply with the Public Information Act.
And
No,
it
you
took
don't
us
have to do
several...
That's the whole point of the act, is that you have to do that.
No, that's not true. When the NDE says you have to do these Second Street rehabs on the wastewater treatment plant, you don't have to say yes. You can say no, we won't do them, or you can say not yet, we can't afford to do them.
Well, this is
But
the
because
learning
we always,
experience
every
that
time
you should
somebody
have
does
then.
something, do it.
I've told you this
It could
before.
damage our town.
Use your personal email for personal business, and use your government email for government business. And
That's what
don't
the
mix
IT
the
policy
two.
says to do.
And
I
that's,
don't do that.
and the question...
You don't do that.
I do only town transactions on my email and delete everything every month. And I never responded to any junk mail.
Okay, Councilman Wentz.
Well, I personally think the council should have access or have copies of this that we can look ourselves and see what transgressions actually have transpired here. Was there, how many confidential emails were sent out? How inappropriately was this email used? That's the questions that we need to know about, because this is a violation of city policy, and it could put us in jeopardy, that I think is
Well,
important.
look very carefully when you do that investigation on the fact that I never responded to any of this junk email that came to me. No response. I never emailed anyone about any of it. It's all junk. It went into the trash, and I deleted the trash, just like he described.
So my question is, what is the logical next step here? Because we have to determine, I guess, whether or not the violation occurred? Is that what we need to do?
I don't think you need to do anything. I mean, the mayor basically said, stop it. Now, let's back up and say what should have happened, if you want that advice. What should have happened is the first moment you got some spam email like that, you should have contacted the IT person.
Well, I haven't logged on since before the Christmas holiday.
I'm-
The first
If
email,
you all get any spam email
Right.
We always,
from anything, including dating sites or whatever you're saying it is, you need to contact the IT person so that he can block those from the
let me
city
do that
server.
tonight, then.
Okay?
Spam folder.
That's
no
number
more
one.
emails. I got emails today. I logged in another
And he's
time.
I'm not
talking, he's
interested
talking
in-
about your city email account.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, I'm not
No
interested in
more-
you explaining me your stuff. You can tell your colleagues. I'm telling you what you should
I
be
am
doing.
telling the world.
Is that you don't just delete them, you report them. And that should happen because that's how the city gets viruses and everything else into its system.
I agree
That's
with
first.
that.
As far as what you should do next is, if you're interested in seeing this, making sure that you know what we've seen, what the paper has seen, what Councilman Frazier sees,
Just now,
that can be provided to you in some format. I don't know how, but that'll be figured out, whether it's a zip drive that you can put on, or whether you can come in and look at a computer, or whatever. I don't know that you need to do anything, that there's a fact-finding mission at this point in time, until you all know what the facts are.
And that's what we're missing, are the facts at this point. So that's all I'm asking. And that's all I have on that topic, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Well, I have another new business item.
Another
Before
one.
you go on to the closing statements, I attended the legislative breakfast of the Carroll County Chamber of Commerce at Springdale Preparatory School, and the applicant for the person who owns the photography barn, where photographs by Michelle used to be, over here across
Are
the
you
red.
referring to the tannery barn?
Yeah.
The tannery barn.
Okay.
Has been forced to go through, she stood up and pled with Justin Reedy and others to do something about the fact that she's been forced to do a change of use. And I had photographs taken there for wedding events, and wedding events there under Michelle and under the new tannery barn, they're going to do the same thing. And I think the town has erred by making her do a change of use. And I want to make a motion that we overrule the zoning department and declare that that application for use of that property for the tannery barn is not a change of use. It's cost her thousands and thousands of dollars, and we did the same thing on the Agora headquarters, thousands and thousands of dollars on a change of use. So I would move that we overrule the zoning department that has said that's a change of use for the tannery barn application. It's not yet approved. And I do that in the form of a motion.
I can give the details, but let me interrupt before you guys get too far down the road. You don't have the authority to do that, okay? If somebody wants to question the ruling of the zoning administrator, that needs to be decided by the Board of Zoning Appeals, not the council. So,
Why?
because that's what the ordinance says, is that the ordinance says zoning
If a
administrator.
staffer does something we don't agree with, we can overrule the staffer, can't we?
I know you want to make it up as you go, but
No,
that's
I
not
want to
how
ask you
this.
that question.
I'm telling you, the statute, if you read the statute, it's a zoning statute, that if the zoning administrator, somebody is aggrieved by their decision, they have to appeal it to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And they have so many days to do that, and that wasn't ever done. So even though you all feel like we're going to change that, that is not within your authority to do
Well,
it.
it's very onerous what's occurred to them during this application process.
And I think that you
And if
might
based on
want
that
to hear.
advice, I'll withdraw my motion, but
Well-
I just want to say that that's not a change of use.
And that's not 100% accurate, and I think you should hear the details. I'm telling you the statute, but
Right.
Mr. Weeprick will have the details.
Thank you.
That project, currently, the property is, the last use was a residence. There was a home-based business in the property for a photography studio. The change of use is taking it from basically being a residential use. You can, within most residential districts, you can have a home occupation use. You can have an office for, a tax preparation company, or you can, be a web designer, or, anything like that where you're not going to cause disruption to the neighborhood. That's home occupation. Those are allowed. But that doesn't change your house from being a residential property. The zoning, doesn't change. The use is still residential, even though I might run a business out of my home. When you start changing so that no one is living there, and now the property is going to be an event venue, and it's not an occupied property for a residence, for a dwelling, now we're talking about a change of use. But just with regard to the city's role in this, we have adopted the Carroll County building codes. So the county administers the building codes for us. We try to coordinate everything with the county to the best of our ability, and we try to inform developers and property owners of the process and refer them to the county when it comes to something relative to the building code. The change of use is, at this point, what the manager at that site, I think, is concerned about are more the building code aspects of the change of use. They have already gone through the city site development plan process. They have been approved. The plans have been recorded. They've received their zoning certificate for the pavilion they built, for the other improvements that have been done to the site. But they have not come back in to change the property from a residence to an event venue. Now, because they've already gone through the site development plan process, they're approved to be able to do that. They just need to come in and apply for another zoning certificate. They seem to have reservations with the building code, however, because there are things that apply for a commercial property that differ from a residential property. And I have not been in touch with the folks from the Tannery Barn for a couple months now. We're just waiting for them to make application. And to the best of my knowledge, they have not come in for a zoning certificate to change the use, and they also have not been in touch with the county to allow the county to come out and have a look to help guide them on what they will need to apply for specifically as far as changes to the building. So as far as the city and county go, we are just waiting for them to take the next step. But they've been through the site plan process. The last piece for the city is a zoning certificate to change the use to the event venue from a dwelling. That's why it's a change. It's not, nobody's going to live there going forward. It's going to be an event venue as opposed to somebody's dwelling.
You're saying I can't make a motion to overrule the zoning administrator?
Yeah, we don't have the authority to do that on this council.
The first thing is that you talked about the zoning administrator making the decision, and
Well,
yes.
somebody declared it a change of use. It wasn't a vote of the council.
Okay, so I'll tell you, first of all, you can't overrule the zoning administrator. However, this issue isn't in the zoning administrator's lap anyway. It's with the county building codes. So you can't make a motion. I mean, what would your motion be to
So
override
the
the county?
county has made a decision that it's a change of use, not the town. Is that what you're saying then? I thought the town had made it. The way she articulated it at that event was that the town has made me go through the change of use and pled with the delegation to intercede on their behalf.
We have adopted the county building code. So the county building code says going from a house to a commercial use is a change of use. We've adopted that code. It's our responsibility to coordinate with the county to make sure that that code is followed. By adopting it, it effectively becomes our code. Somebody else is administering it for us. But if we didn't want to do what the county building code said, we should have written our own building code.
Well, when I spoke up this evening about it, since I'd spent so much time there with the former owner, and there were events there related to weddings, that it didn't seem to me to be a change of use, unless you're doing a livability code that requires an upgrade to current county standards, which would be maybe very costly for her.
Well, but livability would only be if they lived there. The problem herein lies that they're not living there.
The livability code adopted by the county has resulted in half the county's historic homes being bulldozed. People cannot afford to bring everything up to county standards. Maybe that's why they haven't come and gotten a certificate.
Just to clarify, the county's livability code only applies to residential rental units. It doesn't apply to owner-occupied homes.
Right.
So, rental housing needs to be held to a certain standard. The livability code is a minimum standard. Certainly there are aspects of older homes that present a lot of challenges.
Yeah, when you drive up and down the road and see an
an
abandoned house, you know why. It's
to
because
come
of
up
that
to the
livability.
code. But that does not mean that, there may be reason that someone can't rent the property according to the livability code. There may be a lead paint issue. There may be, other maintenance issues. There may be mold issues. There's all sorts of things that could be problematic in an older home. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that it can't be, rehabilitated as a single-family home. I think we're branching off into a different direction.
Oh, we're going deep in a
Back
rabbit
to-
hole right now. Yeah.
Back to the tannery barn, again, we are just waiting for them to make the next move.
Right.
And they have been advised of, all the things that they would be looking at very early in the process. And we're just waiting.
Okay. Madam Chair, can we ask that
Yeah.
Councilman Frazier withdraw the motion that he presented?
Oh, I already did that.
Oh, great. Okay.
When the attorney advised me, and I appreciate your advice, that would be out of order, I withdrew it already.
Okay, next we're going to have council member reports. And let's start at this end
What?
with Ms. Councilwoman Fuller.
Let's see, you caught me off guard. Just a shout out to the guys who helped get the Christmas decorations down, although I would have liked to have seen the snowflakes stay up a little longer. And to everybody that helped take down the stuff at the park. So we're all packed up and already making plans for next year. Joe.
Okay.
Well, to begin with, I want to say thank you to Councilwoman Fuller for spearheading the effort to tackle the Christmas decorations. You did phenomenal. For me, just a couple of specific things tonight. First of all, the chief wanted me to let everybody know that the department has concluded their investigation into the tire slashings and the racist graffiti at the Chinese restaurant. The same individual has been arrested for both crimes, and details will be forthcoming. And so I want to commend the chief and the department for all of their hard work, their tremendous effort, and their diligence in pursuing this. We really are blessed to have a department of officers as professional and high caliber as ours. That's the kind of stuff that consistently puts us in the top 10 safest cities in this entire state, so thank you to them. Last month, there was a suggestion that perhaps during council member reports, some kind of general statement or report regarding police-related activities could be given, like maybe number of arrests per month, something like that. And so the chief has agreed that's a good idea, and this coming month we're going to be looking at different ways of presenting that and ways of coming up with that report. On a positive note, the police department received a thank you letter from the principal at Northwest Middle School, in which this letter revealed that the food collected by the police during their Beards for Hope drive has benefited over 21 families. And the chief wanted me to, very specifically say that our support of the police, letting them grow the beards and do this, and the community's support in responding to the food drive has benefited who knows how many people. And that is an absolutely wonderful and incredible thing, and I look forward to working with the police to see what they do next. Very final thing tonight for me is that I'm going to again be organizing our Relay for Life team this year for the city and for the police department. I don't know what the theme is going to be this year. Last year, you remember, it was Star Wars. So anybody who wants to participate, please let me know. The first meeting is tomorrow evening. And hopefully it'll be a theme where I can wear a tie. And that's it for me.
I remember last year you discussed doing a Gatsby theme for the next one.
I'm going to try pressing that. Yeah, I'll try pressing that again. I'll do that.
Do your best.
Get a straw boat or I'll wear that.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Councilman Wynn.
Well, now to the boring world of Planning Commission. The council received the minutes from the last meetings. I just want to let you know, we did discuss earlier that the Planning Commission did give favorable recommendations for Taneytown Crossing as well as the Meads Crossing setback variances they were seeking. This coming month, we're going to be entertaining the site plan for Bollinger Park, and also the county's bringing their bike and ped master plan for us to discuss, which is kind of going to tie into Bollinger Park as well, with all the pathways and things like that. Again, Councilwoman Fuller, Christmas decorations on point. I agree. Those snowflakes should still be up, especially given the events of this past weekend.
Right.
They were simply replaced with the real ones.
Yeah.
And then on a more personal note, I'm very excited to say that I started a new career today. I've been hired by the Westminster City Police Department, and I'll be starting Police Academy next Tuesday for the next 7 months in Frederick. At that point, the plan is to be a police officer. So I just want to make that announcement today. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
I want to thank the council and the mayor and for the fact that in the month of January, we didn't follow our normal procedure of having a workshop on Wednesday and a voting session on Monday, which would have been today. That allowed the Liberty to be involved in Annapolis in the last week, and was a wise thing to do, I think. I think today's meeting was sufficient for the cold winter month of January. The great news for Carroll County is that we have a number of new delegates in our delegation. Trent Kittleman has asked not to be on the Judiciary Committee, and the Speaker of the House has put 2 Carroll County representatives on the Judiciary Committee, where we only had 1. Delegate Pippy and Delegate Cox are now there, of the 9 members of that committee in the minority to work. And so Carroll County has doubled its voice on the House Judiciary Committee, and that's great news for Carroll County, great news for our town. And I want to thank the council for allowing us to go down to Annapolis and be part of the incredible changes that have occurred in the legislature.
Okay.
Okay, and on a final note, the council did attend the opening legislative session reception last week, which is why we weren't here. And it was an enjoyable evening. We got to meet and greet and hobnob with some of the Carroll County delegation, and it was a very nice evening. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.